art historian who deals with medieval materials. I have to say I've never met him, but I'm looking forward to the lecture. Deals with aspects of anthropology and religious studies. As I mentioned, taught many years at Yale. So let's go over, if possible, to the Zoom so we can see Professor Lara. Is that possible?
Yeah.
There we are. Or is this a video? Okay.
Good evening to all in Jerusalem. Can you see my video?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Let me express my admiration to the archaeologists here present.
Mr. Lara, can you please turn on the video?
I have it on. I can see
Your
it.
camera?
My camera is not functioning, but I believe you can see my screen.
No, we can't see you even. You need to turn on
Camera's not working.
your camera.
As I said, my camera is not functioning.
Never mind. Okay.
I will begin. In the northwest quadrant of the Temple Mount, there stands today a rather unassuming dome or kuba. It is usually locked and off limits to all except to a few Muslim women who use it as a classroom. Enclosed within this partially buried structure, 9 meters tall, is an outcropping of natural bedrock measuring a little over 2 meters in length. It is triangular and pointed toward its lower north end, but was apparently cut and trimmed at some time on the taller south face. The rock is known in Arabic by the names Kursi Suleiman, the seat or throne of Solomon, or Kursi Isa, the seat or throne of Jesus, but also known by the name of the building covering and ennobling it, the Dome of Solomon, the Dome of the Small Rock, or the Dome of the Fragment of the Rock.
That's weird.
The origin of each title is lost in a haze of Jewish, Christian, and Muslim legends. In this presentation, I will focus precisely on legendary material on this legendary rock in the Christian historical, liturgical, and artistic imagination. The protruding rock has been in its place since time immemorial and was probably visible during the existence of the Solomonic and Herodian temples. Being that any prominent boulder or outcropping of stone was imbued with numinous importance, it is understandable that this living rock would attract mythic attention. As Robert Oosterhuis says, old stones never die. They have a tendency to be reinterpreted in succeeding cultures, religions, and political situations. In Jewish and Muslim folklore, the rock was the place where King Solomon sat to oversee the construction of the temple, or where he stood when he dedicated the altar of Holocaust. As indicated by one of the Muslim titles of the building, the rock was also believed to be a fragment of the primeval foundation stone. In the popular imagination, this association might have been fostered by liturgy and psalmody. According to biblical scholars, Psalm 118 concerns the temple ceremony of a person or personified community who escaped from a life-threatening experience and to bring a sacrificial thanksgiving offering. Verse 22, the stone rejected by the builders has become the cornerstone, may have contributed to a popular legend that the stone fragment of the Kısã had been originally part of the foundation stone, but rejected by the primeval divine builder. Later, in the Common Era, New Testament scholars certainly understood the discarded stone metaphorically in relation to the rejection of Jesus of Nazareth by the temple authorities and as part of his larger passion narrative. Moreover, verse 22 had been quoted by Jesus himself while teaching in the temple precincts. The Psalm verse became a foundational proof text in early Christianity. Contrary to popular belief, Muslim propaganda, and Wikipedia, Christians did visit Temple Mount in the Byzantine period for religious reasons. Too much importance has been given to St. Jerome's polemical comments that the Temple Mount was desolate and had become a garbage dump. On the contrary, it is possible that some Christians, like hermits and monks, constructed small dwellings there, as well as small structures to commemorate events from the life of Jesus and his mother Mary. These events on Temple Mount were recounted not only in the four Gospels, but more importantly, in the apocryphal Gospels, and by that means they later entered the Quran and Muslim piety, where they remain today. By the 5th century of the Common Era, liturgical documents confirm that Christians congregated on the temple esplanade on Palm Sunday, also known by them as Passion Sunday. As the procession of clergy descended from the Mount of Olives and approached the eastern wall, the choir began the singing of Psalm 118, "Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good." When the procession entered the Golden Gate, the boys' choir mounted the roof of the gate and began verse 19 with the words, "Open to me the gates of righteousness, I will enter into them and give thanks." Then, when the procession and congregation were assembled together on the temple esplanade, they made one or more stations where verses 22 and following were sung, beginning with the words, "The stone which the builders rejected has become the cornerstone." After the stations, the tone of the Palm Sunday liturgy changed radically from one of joy to sorrow as the procession exited the Temple Mount westward through the Paradise Gate on its way to another outcropping of natural bedrock, that of Golgotha in the Holy Sepulchre complex. Upon arrival, the gospel narrative of Jesus' crucifixion was read in its entirety. It appears that by the 5th century, the small rock of the throne of Jesus was being associated with the biblical stone, literally and metaphorically rejected, and now made the personified cornerstone of a new spiritual temple. The fact that the rock was associated in Jewish legend with Solomon's dedication of the altar of Holocaust may have lent a sacrificial connotation to the site within the context of Jesus' last days. Thus, in the Palm Sunday liturgy, the Temple Mount acted as an annual midway station, a sort of liminal time and space between the commemoration of Jesus' teaching years and the final events of his life. As many of you know, the Kısã is not the only lithic seat of Jesus in the Holy Land. A stone seat of Jesus is found in the Monastery of the Temptation, And in Nazareth, the Church of the Mensa Christi contains a block of limestone said to be a table at which Jesus sat and ate with his disciples. His footprints are supposedly on the Mount of Olives and his handprint on the Via Dolorosa. From early on, outcrops of bedrock became, in the Christian imagination, spiritually powerful places where Jesus had sat, stood, rested, taught, and ate. As Maurice Halbach says, sacred places commemorate not facts, but rather beliefs. Returning now to the Kursi Isa, in the Byzantine period, the original structure, if there was one, was most likely nothing more than a low fence or barricade, meant to demarcate the stone and to prevent desecration. After the Islamic conquest in 638, Muslims absorbed the history and legends of Jerusalem from the local Jewish and Christian population, including heterodox and apocryphal stories. They continued to honor the site for King Solomon and for Jesus as prophet and teacher, but not in his passion role, which Muslims, of course, reject. Muslim pilgrims were instructed to make a prayer station at the rock during their rounds on the temple esplanade. It is probable that they constructed some type of covering over the Kursi rock. During the Crusader occupation of Temple Mount, the Kursi Isa fell within the area belonging to the Augustinian canons of the Templum Domini, alias Dome of the Rock. The liturgical procession through the Golden Gate on Palm Sunday and the stations on the esplanade resumed as in the Byzantine era. They continued singing Psalm 118 and the verse, "The stone which the builders rejected." The procession likewise exited through what was now being called the Sorrowful Gate on its way to Golgotha and the completion of the Passion story. Under the Crusaders, a structure rose over the rock as a freestanding open-air hubat of 8 arches supported on piers. It looked generically similar to this 19th century reconstruction in the United States. The association of the Kursi rock with the passion of Jesus and the blood of Jesus became even more intense in late medieval devotion in the belief that Jesus had rested on the rock after his scourging and crowning with thorns by Pilate, which was understood to have transpired nearby in the fortress Antonia. With the Islamic reconquest of Jerusalem in 1187, Muslims further embellished the site with the complete structure we know today. The walls were eventually enclosed and a mihrab niche was installed facing Mecca. The podium platform was added later. However, the edifice was once again off limits to Christians, but visible to them from afar, especially from the Mount of Olives. They had to be content with a substitute oratory constructed just outside the northwest temple walls, the so-called Chapel of the Repose, at one time the first station on the Via Dolorosa. The domed structure was destroyed in the earthquake of 1927. However, we know that a large rock had been transported and installed in the chapel, seemingly to imitate the rock of the Kursi Isa nearby. And a column capital depicted Jesus seated on a rock, accompanied by angels. A window in this chapel pierced the temple perimeter wall and allowed visitors to gaze on the Muslim buildings, including the dome of the Kursi Isa. Such a view from a distance seems to be represented in a woodblock print of the 15th century. Jesus has been scourged and crowned with thorns, but he does not bear the nail prints in his feet or hands. Hence, it is meant to represent a pre-crucifixion moment. Note that Jesus descends from an octagonal building, generically similar to the kubat housing the Kursi Isa. It is probable that before the infilling of the northern part of the Temple Mount, the kubat was actually raised up on several steps. I suggest that the infilling partially buried the structure and necessitated the installation of the podium and the descending steps. By the late Middle Ages, the visual image of a suffering Jesus sitting on an outcropping of bedrock had become widely popular in art, literature, and devotion. The image goes under a number of titles. The Germans call it the Herrgottsruhe, the repose of the Lord. For others, it is Christ seated on the cold stone, or with a Solomonic connotation, Christ the just judge. Etchings, paintings, and sculptures of the scene were propagated by the Franciscans in Europe and the Spanish Americas. One such etching carries a verse from the Song of Songs, referencing King Solomon and his crown and applying it to Jesus of Nazareth. Conclusion. What began as a mere natural phenomenon of bedrock and a topographical oddity was by legend, theology, liturgy, and psalmody transformed into a site of memory and an object of transcendent consequence. As the historian Jonathan Smith notes, in the Holy Land, story, ritual, and place can become inextricably one, and sacred stones can become relics. Every Palm Sunday, Christians today continue to sing Psalm 118 with the words, "The stone rejected by the builders has become the cornerstone." Thus, even without their knowing it, Christians today honor a lithic throne of Jesus, an archaeological artifact that is still found on the Temple Mount of Jerusalem. Thank you.